Hello and welcome to TheHill's Digital Health podcast. TheHill is the digital health transformation catalyst based at Oxford University Hospitals. We're working to help the NHS make the most of digital innovation. We do this in three ways. We work with innovators to help them develop their products and ideas and make them relevant to the NHS. We work with clinical teams to engage them with digital innovation, help them increase their digital skills and adopt innovation. And finally, we collaborate with partners, bringing together multiple organisations to form a digital health ecosystem. This podcast series focuses on clinical entrepreneurs, our clinical colleagues who have decided to start a business or social enterprise to develop a digital health innovation. Our guest today is Rachael Grimaldi, who is CEO and founder of CardMedic and an NHS anaesthetist, currently at Royal Surrey NHS Foundation Trust. Rachael, welcome.
Thank you. Hi, Megan. Thank you so much for having me. I'm honoured to be your first guest.
Well, you were an obvious choice, Rachael, because I don't think I've ever met anyone who is as enthusiastic about innovation, as fantastically good at pushing forward a digital health innovation in such a short space of time as you have done with CardMedic, and of course, very passionate about the NHS as well.
Oh, thank you.
Can you tell me a bit about CardMedic? So can you introduce CardMedic for the audience? What service does it offer?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. That was a very, very kind introduction. I really appreciate it. So CardMedic is a website and app designed to improve communication between frontline healthcare staff and patients across any barrier. So it's essentially a one-stop communication shop. It's an A to Z list of content that's a bit like scripts for common healthcare topics that healthcare staff can use to guide their interaction with patients. And it's available in different languages, in easy read with pictures, sign language, read aloud, and then we also have an integrated translation tool.
As always, it always feels like it covers an awful lot of ground, CardMedic. So presumably there's an awful lot of people using it. Is that fair?
Yeah, so it was... We've had 50,000 users in 120 countries and 16,000 app downloads in the last year. So it's been very much, well, first of all, it's been a surprise because we didn't set out to start a business. And, you know, second of all, the growth has been much faster than anticipated. So it's been quite a journey over the last year, that's for sure. And we've now got our first customer, which is Kent, Surrey, Sussex Air Ambulance, which we're very excited about. And we have got lots in the sales pipeline for customers, for our subscription model, and also for pilots as well.
Can you tell me a bit about the story of how you set up CardMedic?
Yeah, definitely. So, as I said, it was very unintentional. I was on maternity leave last year, visiting family in the States where I used to live when I was younger. And because of COVID, our flights were cancelled repeatedly. So we ended up there for nearly 6 months. But whilst we were out there in February or March time, when things were starting to kick off, particularly in the UK, UK was a bit ahead of the States at that point. I read an article about a patient who'd been to intensive care with COVID, and he was terrified because he just couldn't understand the healthcare staff through the PPE. So I was desperate to do something to help and thought, what are people doing? Are they writing notes on paper? How are they communicating with patients? This must be a real struggle. And I spoke to some friends who said it was. So I thought, well, what about if I essentially replicated those notes on a paper, but put them on a website and in an A to Z list. So just made that content available, common topics that people would be talking about, and made it really easily accessible. So it was concept to launch in 72 hours. My husband was out there with me, has a background in e-commerce, and he's done some web design stuff in the past. So built the website. I just wrote a load of content, and between us, we put it online. And then shared it with some friends. So I thought, great, I can do, done something to help, I hope. And then put it online, and someone within a couple of days said, you should join Twitter. I thought, I'm not sure. I'm not really into social media. I didn't know, not been on Twitter before, and I wasn't sure how it helped. But shared it with some friends. And then within 3 weeks, we had 8,000 users in 50 countries. It had just gone a bit viral. And then we had some media coverage. which sent a lot of traffic to the site for a couple of weeks. It was a bit crazy, and did some TV and radio, and off the back of that have done some podcasts and webinars and lots of conferences and things. And then, yes, the user base has grown from there. But actually, through all of that, the feedback we were getting was CardMedic is such a useful tool that it needs to stay around after the pandemic. And as I know from my clinical experience, and now I'm back in my NHS work in the last few weeks, actually, there are so many long-standing barriers to good communication in healthcare. So whether that's language, whether it's a learning disability, whether it's visual impairment, literacy issues, deafness, cognitive impairment, stroke, dementia, and these are encountered every day in clinical practice. And despite the best will in the world, there is not enough budget to supply translators, signers, speech and language therapists, learning disability nurses to every single patient who needs it every single time they have any healthcare encounter. And that's where CardMedic comes in. So we're there to try and bridge these gaps in service provision that exist all over the place, and that are there despite the resources and the budgets. These spaces can't be filled and they can't be reached just by, the existing resources alone. So we're just trying to support that and reach those gaps. Hence why we suddenly found ourselves in the scenario of, right, well, we now need to kind of pivot a little bit, make sure that this is accessible for absolutely everybody, and set up a business so we can make it sustainable.
I love the passion that comes through whenever I talk to you, Rachael, about kind of wanting to help and wanting to kind of make a difference for your clinical colleagues. Do you feel like you've managed to do that? Do you feel like it's done what you wanted it to do?
Yeah, I think we're still very much early in our journey. We've been doing it a year now. We're full of ideas. We've got so much to do, and we're just launching the Easy Read and the sign language now. But I know people are using this on the front line every day. So I definitely feel like it's made a difference, not just to the patients, but also to my colleagues, because they are able to deliver a standard of care to the patients that they want to try and deliver, but might not have the resources to on a daily basis. And, just as an example, for me personally, 3 days ago, I was at work and had a patient who only spoke Russian, and was initially translating through FaceTime to her daughter. She needed an emergency operation. The translator couldn't come into theatre with her, could only come so far. And so we had no one in theatre that could speak her language. And I was able to use CardMedic to then say to her, right, we're just attaching your monitoring and we're going to give you some oxygen, and this is the medicine, you're now going to go off to sleep. And she just had that reassuring voice and the information. I was able to play the content to her in Russian at the bedside and just reassure her as she was drifting off to sleep. And that's just one example in my practice, just happened to kind of crop up, and it happens on a daily basis in the NHS that there are these barriers. So yes, I hope that I'm helping people. I feel, with the uptake that we've had, that there's definitely a need for it, for sure.
So how many languages do you have now on CardMedic?
Oh gosh, it's growing and growing. So we had 11. I think we might have 13 now. But the aim is we'd love to get about 30 languages on there. And we're working with a group so we've got lots of people volunteering to do translations, which is amazing. One of whom is this amazing palliative care nurse, who is translating into Japanese. We've got lots of different volunteers from, some people in Europe. We're working with refugees in Kenya, Kakuma refugee camp, through the Step Up One Foundation, to translate into some languages indigenous to Africa, including Somali, Swahili, Amharic, Arabic. They can do about 11, 12 languages between them. And we're just translating into Welsh, and we've got a team of people working on that as well, which is very exciting. And of course, there are the different dialects that we need to account for as well, and all these things. So we're building our way quite rapidly towards 20 to 30 languages. Some of it's been done, so about half of it's been done by humans, volunteers, and Language Connect volunteered their services as well. And then the rest is machine translated, which will then be translated by humans as well, but it's such a big expense. All these things cost so much money. And the same for the sign language. We've had people volunteering to do this British Sign Language videos, but we're now working with Inclusive Fruit to do a kind of partnership where, you know, they can help support, do the videos in different sign languages, kind of working together with us, because that is a huge expense, much more so than even the spoken languages.
Absolutely. But presumably it's an expense that the NHS is facing every day, every time they need to do this for a patient. So by systematizing it in that way, then you're potentially saving lots of money for the service in the longer term.
Yeah, that's what we hope. And we haven't got those metrics yet, but that's definitely something that we've modelled out. And by no means would we want to or expect to replace translators or interpreters or signers. They're providing a vital service, but we just know there aren't the budgets to cover them all the time when they're needed. And so to try and bridge that gap and to potentially help the NHS streamline, and they may save costs in the process, that's fantastic, because that can be rediverted to other resources as well.
So why did you choose a digital product?
Yeah, great question. So I think it was a mixture. I think partly it was driven by, we've got to create the solution really rapidly, and we've got to get it into the hands of end users straight away. So that's the staff and the patients. It needs to be free. It needs to be accessible, intuitive, simple. Just pick it up and run with it. And they're in your pockets, literally in your pocket. And it was just the easiest, the quickest solution was make this digital. It also means you can, of course, reiterate and adapt it and grow it and scale it. And it was also a combination of my husband's skill set. Being able to design websites means that he was able to build the website. And so between the two of us, with my skill set with the content, and he was able to build a website, digital was just a very easy, simple solution. And then with software as a service as well, you haven't got all the kind of capital material startups of a shop and buying a product and building a product and all those sorts of things, which are much slower to launch and get out there. This was just instantaneous and definitely kind of made sense as a really quick fix solution, but certainly going forwards makes it much more scalable. The content we can continue just to keep growing and growing and growing the content and the features and the functionality and the networks of users and sharing information. We can integrate to electronic health records, which is in our roadmap. So it's just got so much scope for development in terms of technology and also from a usability point of view.
I think that's the case for a lot of digital innovations, isn't it? You know, that it is quick to set up. It's accessible to everyone. Everyone now has a pretty powerful computer in their pocket most of the time. Yeah. They're carrying their mobile phone around. It means that you can scale it to everyone at relatively minimal additional cost once you've set up that original database of information. And so I can see that it's a really nice way to kind of get this sort of thing into people's pockets and impact the most number of patients that you can. It must have been a bit of a whirlwind journey for you, though. You know, that sort of initial 72 hours, I imagine you didn't really sleep. And then now you're only like a year in. How has that felt for you personally?
Exhausting. To sum it up in one word, exhausting. Stressful, emotional, but full of lots of highs as well. It's been a completely new experience. It's opened up a whole different part of my brain that I never knew existed. You know, I've studied medicine, I've studied physiology before medicine. I'm very kind of science-based and on a career path, never had a plan or ambition to start a business. But my husband, we've been together 20 years and he was very much he's run businesses for 15 years. It's his comfort zone. So he's kind of coming at it from a very different angle. It definitely has lots of highs. I think the lows are primarily just the exhaustion, just not getting enough sleep. We also have 3 children under 5 and a dog. So it's just kind of the whole work-life balance goes out the window for a bit. And it's very much work. So I think it depends, you know, if you had no children, you'd be doing this flat out. If you got children, you're doing it flat out. So it's kind of nonstop. It's definitely been exciting as well to meet so many new people, to realize that although I felt very much like an imposter at the beginning of all of this, and still, sometimes do think, well, I've not had formal training, and what do I know about being in the business world? But actually feeling like over the last year, kind of gaining my confidence and speaking to investors and speaking to networking with other businesses and speaking to hospitals and things, and thinking, actually, with the training that some of the training I've had over the last year, it's given me the confidence to do that. So yeah, I think personally it's been an incredible, unexpected, wonderful, exhausting journey in summary.
How does it fit with your view of yourself as a clinician and kind of your clinical work? I mean, it must be a bit of a tension, sort of having the children, having your clinical work, having the business. I mean, that's a lot to handle, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. It is. I think the pandemic has definitely been a really strange time to do all of this. I think in some ways it's opened a lot of doors. But in other ways, we've had the children at home for the last 18 months. They've been at home for 15 of those months. And during that whole time, we've been doing CardMedic. So it's been a massive juggle. And I was actually really quite apprehensive about going back to work and starting my clinical job, because I thought, how am I going to balance this out? But now the children are back at nursery and I'm doing my clinical work, actually, I'm able to focus on CardMedic a bit more because the children are at home less. And through my clinical work, it's actually a massive asset, I think, being on the shop floor, because you've still massively got your finger in the pulse. And if you're speaking to investors, for example, they really want someone in the team, ideally, of course, the founders, the co-founders, to have, that deep sector knowledge to say, I'm living and breathing this every day. This is what I do for my work. I'm networked into, and medicine's a relatively small world, or healthcare is a relatively small world. So the network that you get from your colleagues that might know people in other hospitals. And I think there's a certain amount of respect when you're speaking to hospitals, for example, if you can say to them, I'm not coming in to sell you a product that I don't know the realities of its application. If you're coming in saying, I am a frontline healthcare professional, so I'm you're walking the walk and talking the talk, so to speak. So you're able to sell with credibility as well. So I said to my husband and my family, I said, at the moment, going to work feels like a hobby, so it's almost relaxing. It's like I can just focus on my job, and I am talking about CardMedic whilst I'm there and finding out people's opinions and experiences of working with patients who have communication needs, because it all is definitely corroborating what we're doing, supporting what we're doing, that we have actually got a solution for a very real problem out there. And some people come up with ideas for stuff, good ideas to help enhance it. So I actually think it's an asset to be clinical and run a business as well. It just takes a lot of juggling.
I think that's always the case really with entrepreneurship, that the more you understand the problem, the better you are able to address it with your products. And obviously, if you're, frontline healthcare professional who is experiencing that problem in their daily work and has colleagues who are experiencing it, and as you say, that network of people, then I think it makes it very real, doesn't it? And it means that you can immediately test out any of your assumptions on yourself or your colleagues or anyone else, around. And I think you're right as well. There's a certain respect that comes with that, and it's very well deserved, I think, because you do know what you're talking about because you do have that experience.
I just think it's the credibility, isn't it, to say, yes, I'm not. I do. I live and breathe this every day. So I'm very happy to talk to all of these points because I know the realities of my experience over the last decade and that of my colleagues. And here's an example I can give you from 3 days ago, or here's an example I can give you from a week ago, or here's an example of my colleagues from within the last couple of weeks. And everywhere you look, you've got real live examples going on all around you. And like you said, it's a great testing ground as well, because I can take CardMedic in and use it and say, oh, actually, we need this feature, or it'll work better if we do this. And until you're actually there, embedded and engrossed in that environment, it's really hard to just sit in your office or sit at home and do the testing and run testing scripts. You really need to be kind of live in the environment doing the testing, and I think that helps with the rapid iterations as well.
It does, absolutely. I think you're now very much talking the talk when it comes to entrepreneurship, Rachel. But I think you said yourself that, right at the beginning, you might have felt a bit of an imposter and kind of very much new to this world. What sort of support have you had along the way to develop yourself as a business leader?
I think it's come from all different angles. I think, of course, family is very fundamental to all of this, that the kind of home life support from my husband. I think the pandemic has been tricky because from a childcare perspective, if nothing else, it's been hard not having the grandparents around for a lot of it. But I think family, friends, of course. But I think there's the other kind of bits of support along the way are having an amazing team. I think that's really important. I've got fantastic team around me, and that makes a huge difference. And then along the way, I was thinking, how am I going to develop myself as a business person, and came across TheHill, of course, and applied for that. And that was a very kind of unexpected, last minute. Someone had read about the CardMedic in The Guardian, was a social worker, got in contact to say, oh, have you thought about this and that? And, oh, by the way, my son's studying medicine at Oxford. Would you like to have a chat with him? Which I did. He was fantastic and said, oh, you must apply for TheHill. And that, I think, was the day before your applications closed. And I kind of quickly thought, I must do this, put in an application, was so lucky to get a place on the course. And that was an absolutely immense amount. I mean, that really shaped me. It just took me from being someone with zero business knowledge. I'd absorbed about 2% from my husband over the last 20 years because he obviously does business. But yeah, taking, clinician with no business knowledge at all, not particularly digitally literate, certainly never thought of myself as running a digital health company, into suddenly kind of immersed into a world of thinking about the structure of the NHS and procurement and sales cycles and business spiel and jargon and pitching to investors and pitch decks and business plans and all these incredible sort of sources and resources and lectures that you give and your training days. And it just took me a massive leap from where I was at the beginning to, right, I can hold a conversation with an investor now, or I can hold a conversation with a hospital, or I can be conversant in all of these different spaces. And I'm now on the NHS Clinical Entrepreneur Programme, which is fab. But the grounding that TheHill has given me, it means I'm getting a lot more out of that programme as well. I've been given such a massive head start. And so TheHill has just been completely pivotal, actually, in the last year for me. And of course, the extra sessions that you do outside of that. And then I did the Open API Interoperability Bootcamp through TheHill, which was also fab, very technical. So thank heavens I had a developer. And so I think TheHill has just been totally pivotal to CardMedic and to the success so far. And then other kind of things along the way, the Department for International Trade have been brilliant as well. They're kind of like matchmakers. They're a really great network, and they've been very supportive and put us on their digital health export offer and in their top 25 ones to watch list for international expansion, which is very exciting. So the DIT, they've been really good. The Academic Health Sciences Network, Knowledge Transfer Networks, I've tapped into those. They're also really useful resources. The University of Brighton and Brighton and Sussex University Hospitals, NHS Trust, have also been really, really helpful and supportive. Been doing some research and service evaluation stuff, and as well, and kind of got us up and running with things. So yeah, lots of different people along the way. In terms of the team itself, my brother-in-law's an accountant, so he's our interim CFO. I've had lots of volunteers and the speech and language therapists from all across the UK who never met, and learning disability nurses. Got students, advisors from the Royal College of Speech and Language Therapists, the signers we're working with, the volunteer translators. All these amazing people have come together and volunteered their time to help shape CardMedic. And obviously the developers we're working with, Fatfish Digital, have been brilliant. And so I think it's just kind of all come together into this package. But the thing that really took me from clinician to clinical entrepreneur / businesswoman has been TheHill over the last year. And then I'm now continuing that journey being on the NHS Clinical Entrepreneur Programme.
And I'm sure a lot of that is down to you personally, but I'm wondering if you might be able to offer some advice to this year's Market Access Accelerator, which was, of course, the first programme you did with us, Rachael. And how would you advise that they get the most out of the programme?
Yeah, well, first of all, if you got onto the programme, congratulations, because I think this has been the most competitive year yet. And it's a brilliant programme. You're in for a great ride. And I think probably my best bits of advice would be attend all the sessions and listen, absorb, just be there, absorb, listen to all the sessions, the advice, and ask lots and lots of questions, because that's the only way you're going to learn. And follow the advice you're given. It should be very relevant to what you're doing, kind of no matter what stage of business you're at. But if you think, oh, how can I make this relevant to what I'm doing? Ask lots of questions and make the most of your mentorship. I think one of your golden kind of nuggets at TheHill is your amazing team of mentors. And I think that's one of your superpowers. So I think the participants and the candidates, to get the most out of it, go to all the sessions and really, really make the most of your mentor sessions, because they are absolutely invaluable. And I think, yeah, just being a bit of an open book to it all, just going in, no preconceived ideas about what it's like to be involved in business, or the kind of business person you think you should be, or just go and be an open book and just absorb it all. And then also use it as a really great networking opportunity, and follow up on stuff as well, because there's some of the speakers, I mean, all the speakers you have on are fab, but some of them are so experienced, especially around procurement and all that sort of stuff. So I think follow up with the speakers afterwards, make connections on LinkedIn, arrange meetings off your own back with them. A lot of it, although you put the course on and you provide the speakers and you create this amazing atmosphere for everyone to network, there is a lot that you have to do as well off your own back of, that was a great session at TheHill today. I really loved the talk from that person. They will totally link into what I'm doing and be able to support me. So put in the effort to follow that up and actually make connections on LinkedIn and Twitter, or ask for their email details and send them a follow-up email. And I think that's how you make the most out of networking, and also with the other candidates on the course, because you might find you could create a partnership with someone else that they'd complement what you're doing. So yeah, just get immersed, being fully engaged, absorb it all, and make the most of the networking and the mentorship.
I think that's a really good summary of exactly what I saw you doing, Rachael, because I think you're certainly a networker extraordinaire. You've reached out to all sorts of different people, and has, I think, from what I've heard from you, some fantastic conversations and a lot of really positive support from people.
I've been really lucky, actually. Yes, it's been amazing what's come out of it, definitely. And I think people, you don't want to hassle people, of course. And when you're doing a startup, you're working all hours of the day and night. So to be honest, you don't have time to even hassle people. You'd send one email, maybe two, or a LinkedIn message or something. And if you don't hear back, then either you keep trying, or you're on to the next thing because you're just too busy, and everyone's just too busy. So yeah, it's a fine line, but I think just try and make the most out of it and out of all the opportunities.
Yeah, and I think what I've seen of the digital health ecosystem is that, there's an awful lot of people out there who are interested in making this work. Everyone wants to make lives better for staff, better for patients, and want these technologies to really make our healthcare better. I'm wondering, Rachael, because I'm conscious that we need to wrap up soon, but I'm wondering about your your sort of general advice to clinical staff members out there who are thinking of pursuing an idea. Because I guess one of the things I think people find quite difficult is going from doing a purely clinical role or clinical training to then thinking about, I want to solve this problem. Maybe that the solution doesn't necessarily exist within the organization or within the technology that I have available. So maybe I'll create something. And then going from kind of having that problem statement and that idea and that passion to solve the problem to actually becoming a clinical entrepreneur, it feels sometimes like quite a big leap. What do you think people should do first to start on that journey?
Oh, it's a big journey, isn't it? It's a big step to take. I think key to a lot of it is making sure, and you've already touched on this, that your solution is solving a problem. I think that's number one, is just, you might come up with an idea, you think, this is absolutely fantastic, I love this is going to help so many people, it's brilliant. And then you think, actually, what problem am I trying to solve here? Does it actually exist, or is it one that I've sort of twisted in my head a bit to fit my solution? So don't waste your time on a solution that's not solving an actual problem. So part of that will be, as a clinician, like you said, you'll probably already know what the problem is and what the solutions are or are not there. So you probably won't have that so much as a hurdle, but it's just to make sure you do a little bit of market research. What's out there? What's the competition look like? Or is there no competition at all? Just to try and work out what's your kind of product market fit. Where does your idea slot into what's out there currently? So making sure that before you spend loads of time and effort exploring this, that actually your solution is a genuine solution to a genuine problem. Then my personality is, I love to plan, I love to be organized. And if I'd have thought about setting up a business, I probably would have spent 6 months writing a business plan and getting all my stationery together and creating folders on my computer and doing all of this sort of stuff. But actually, I think the reality is you kind of just need to crack on and do it rather than getting too bogged down in all of that side of things. You don't need a business plan to get started with this stuff. You've got your idea, you've got a bit of basic market research under your belt. Is this going to work? And then just get started. And part of just getting started is also making sure, if you can, that you've got maybe a co-founder or some people and team around you. So if you've got someone else you're working with that you think, I don't have this skill set, but they do, let's be co-founders together and set something up. Because the having a good team is really key to your success. And I think everyone will tell you that wherever you go, you can have the best idea in the world, but if you don't have the right team around you, it's not going to be successful. So I think it's, just making sure that your solution is answering a genuine problem, not getting too bogged down in all the detail, just getting started, because then you reiterate and you kind of develop as you go, and making sure you've got a team of really great people. And then underpinning all of that is just making sure it's something you're passionate about, because it does take over your life. So making sure that it's something you're willing to only have 4 hours sleep a night for months and months and year on end, because it is all consuming. So that's probably my best advice to people doing startups. I obviously didn't intend to ever, I feel a bit of an accidental entrepreneur, so I didn't ever intend to start a business. So I just kind of went into it without thinking, without planning, and it's just kind of evolved rapidly from there. So not my usual style, but I think there's something to be said for that, for not overthinking it, just getting on with it.
Just get on with it. That's a great
crack on.
Absolutely. No, I think that's a great place to end, Rachel. Although I have to say that whether you were talking about a business or your family or your clinical work or anything else, I'm pretty sure that you would be passionate about it, and you'd probably be putting in extensive hours to try and do the best you could. So perhaps it's just our fortune that you've decided to make that into entrepreneurship.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you ever so much for joining me today, Rachel. It's been fantastic to talk to you, as always. And thank you ever so much for taking the time out of your very busy schedule. So we've been listening to Rachael Grimaldi, who's CEO and co-founder of CardMedic, and also an NHS anaesthetist and entrepreneur extraordinaire, as I'm sure you will agree, having listened to that interview. If you'd like any help with your digital health innovation, do reach out to us here at TheHill at www.thehilloxford.org, or come and speak to a member of our team, or indeed perhaps apply for our accelerator next year. Thank you ever so much for listening.